Hello, my true crime lovelies. I hope you are well. I hope you are as lovely in life as you are in my mind. Yes. Okay. I finally got a format that I like. So we're going to go into the text between Lana and I. This is going to be the remainder of the January text. And I have a little bit of church announcements, so I'm not going to ramble too long here, but I'll get to the church announcements on the other side of our intro. Thank you to all the members. Thank you to everybody who buys me a coffee. Some of you guys subscribed over there. I didn't even know that was a thing. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. You make all of this possible. All right. I'll see you on the other side. So very quickly, one, I want you to protect your mental health. So this is a video where Lana and I are getting to know each other, right, via text message, and there are telephone chats in between. Sometimes we reference them, but it wasn't uncommon for us to be on the phone for 2-3 hours at a time. I know that is triggering to some people. I appreciate people who ask questions in earnest. Like one of you guys asked, well, what about like a tribute to George? I did do a tribute to George. I think I was one of the early YouTubers screaming, justice for George. I recognized that he had been abused throughout that relationship way before we got to court. Even when I started the text messages, my background was a collage of George as a young man, as a child with his parents. And then I took it down because it started to look a little clunky, like as the text messages were up. But George is always at the forefront of my thoughts in regard to the travesty that is Sarah Boone, right? So I'm not trying to lift Lana up and squish George down. And I think to say that I'm humanizing Lana means that I'm putting down George. I don't agree with that. I think two things can be true at the same time, right? And I'm not trying to convince anyone that Lana is a good person. What I'm saying is I found her to be a good person by getting to know her over time. And I think that she, in earnest, made a mistake with Sarah. And if you are willing to go on the journey with me, you'll see toward the end that she began to realize that, right? And I think honestly, that's one of the reasons why she started talking to me is like she needed some sort of cathartic release. And I was able to do that. And I was curious, but you'll see we're kind of like in the beginning, poking, testing each other out. I know she wants information from me, right? I want information from her, but I also want to show her the truth about Sarah, things that Sarah lied about on the stand. And then eventually, when I got the text messages, things that Sarah lied about in the text messages, I wanted to show her that because someone was like, well, you started giving her documents right away. Yeah, because I didn't know how much time I was going to have with her and I needed to get the truth in front of her, right? Then so if you can handle all of that, stick around. If you can, I get it. And if you've already made up your mind, again, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just trying to show you a different side. Then there are other people who I think are just intentionally being obtuse, like, oh, Tanika's lied to us all of this time. And like I said before, I think it's pretty obvious why I couldn't say anything on the channel. If it's not and you stick around, it will become obvious through these texts. Most of you guys get it. Others are being obtuse. The one thing I'm not going to stand around for is to have my integrity questioned. Someone accused me of accusing Brian of lying to the court, and that is a flat out lie. Please go back and watch the video. First of all, you can't lie about a hypothetical. And what I commented on was the hypothetical that Brian and his attorney put before the court, which was that Sarah was making minimum wage and that he was making $60,000 a year. And what I said was, I think he lowballed it. But I'm saying he lowballed a hypothetical, right? Because he's not making any money and Sarah's not making any money. The last time he had a job was 2021. And I don't know when the last time she had a job is, but she damn sure is not making minimum wage. He gave those as a hypothetical so that he could impute how much she might owe him if she were able to pay child support, to get that as an offset for the 2 years that he was unsanctioned to not be paying alimony, right? From 2020 to 2022, he had no legal standing to not pay it because he hadn't filed anything with the court. Once he filed something with the court in 2022, he was covered. He didn't have to pay anything until that was his motion to eliminate or reduce alimony was sorted out. So what I was saying is he's picking a number. Maybe he's picking 2018 because that's when the divorce was, as $60,000. Or maybe he's picking 2021 because that's the last time he had a job. But in order for me to say he was falsifying records, he would have had to submit that that is what he was actually making. That's not what he was doing. He was submitting a hypothetical situation so that he could get to a number. And what I said, and I provided facts based on current market data, was that I felt that he lowballed it. I'm entitled to my opinion. I backed it up with facts on what I was basing my opinion on, but I never ever said he was lying to the court. And I don't think you can actually lie about a hypothetical. So the whole premise is like bullshit. I'm just calling you out on it. So maybe this isn't the channel for you. You know what I'm saying? If you've got to come in and make up lies to try to get people to turn against me, maybe it's not the channel for you. Let people make up their own mind. I think the whole money thing was like a trigger for a lot of people. Someone came in and was like, this is what the federal minimum wage is, and this is what it is in Wisconsin. The federal minimum wage had nothing to do with what I was talking about in the video. The Wisconsin minimum wage had nothing to do what I was talking about. Someone else was like bringing my child into it, saying, it sounds like I feel like New Yorkers are better than Floridians. I don't know where in the video it sounded like that, but please put the timestamps in. But then to ask if my child had ever seen stars. The sun is a star, so I don't know where you think New York is that we can't see the sun. And specifically, Manhattan is only 19 miles long. New York is a big, wide state. So check out a map. Check out the solar system, take the emotions out of watching the videos that are not about you. I was not talking about anybody in Florida except for Brian Boone and Sarah Boone specifically. So I don't know where that was coming from. The rest of you guys, that was actually, I should have said, I'll put in a timestamp so you could skip that. But by now the timestamp has come up because that was not for everybody, but it needed to be said. Okay, let us get into this. Oh, and I'm going to put myself in the middle here, but you will see as I scroll, you'll be able to see. But the messages are on both sides, so I played with this. I'm trying to give you guys the best experience. If I put myself all the way to the right or the left, I'm covering up the beginning of the messages, so or the end, depending on which side. But being in the middle, you will definitely be able to read all of the text. You can slow it down, speed it up, do everything your heart desires. Oh, wait, I need to show the toolbar so that this part up here is not covering text. Okay. Oh my goodness. Buckle up. Here we go. That was the hardest part, I promise. I'm going to do a little bit of an overlap of where I left off just so, because some people were like, did you skip things? And I don't think I did because I did the screenshots, but it's possible. I'm human. Okay. So on the left side, or I should say the gray, because hopefully that's left for you, but I can't remember if my camera is mirrored. Left is, the gray is Lana, blue is me. So Lana says, he definitely looks like a musician, I'm assuming. Do you sing? Question mark, question mark. The way you speak made me wonder. Not anymore, but you can sing. I was right. And I said, oh, wait, we went to high school with Audra McDonald. She was a year ahead of us. So Audra is like a pretty famous Broadway star. She's got a lot of Tonys and she can sing. So that's what made me think of her. My voice is shot from smoking. So singing is long. And like, I used to be able to do Whitney Houston covers like in high school. I couldn't do that to save my life right now. But anyway, then she didn't know who Audra was. So she says, Audra McDonald. And then I put Broadway star. And she said, that's right. You went to a performing school. And then I was like, she's starring in Gypsy, which she is. If you're interested or a fan, she's on Broadway now in Gypsy. Lana says, wow, I wouldn't have been surprised if you had told me you went to Juilliard. Audra went to Juilliard. I think I'm going to attempt to get some sleep. Love to speak with you again. Thanks so much for the family documents. I had seen some of your broadcasts, but this is unreal to see it on paper. Have a great night. I say, you too, my eyelids are heavy. And also, because when you read it on screen, I'm guiding you through it. If she has it in her hand, she's an avid reader. She can go through all the details because she was confused about like the payout. She thought Sarah's alimony was so high because she took a deduction on the equity, which wasn't true. She kept her 401k. She got paid out her full equity, which makes it even more ridiculous that Sarah was asking Brian, like, what did he do with the proceeds? He paid off half of her credit card debt, and there was something else I can't remember, but she got to go through it page by page. So that was my intent in sending her those documents. And then she reacted, heart to you too. My eyelids are heavy. I think it must have kicked either she or I out of iMessage because normally it will just show the heart over here, but you'll see that now and again on here. So Sunday, January 12th, 5:02 p.m. Nice work. You're a great interviewer. So this is right after I had done the interview with the Florida Department of Corrections officer, the CO. And so I say, thank you. I'm glad you were able to join. Did you enjoy your reading? Her reading meaning the court documents. Yes, it was fascinating. Yes, let me know if you want the lease that Sarah and George signed in January of 2020. So this was to demonstrate to her that Sarah could not have afforded that apartment without George. She thought Sarah was taking care of George in some way, but Sarah framed it that way. Even in the interview, she'd be like, oh, he'd help out with a bill here and there, but she'd always refer to it as my town home. Sarah never lived by herself. She went from her parents' house or her mother's house because her dad had died to living with Brian, then to living with George, now to living with all the bad girls in Florida, the really, really bad girls in the annex. But yeah, so I sent her the lease. He was never taken off. Like even Sarah admitted that in court. She said he was like changed to type of tenant, but he was always on that lease. She could not have qualified for that town home without him. So Sunday, January 12th. So I'm doing all of this in furtherance of George, of her understanding what George's real role was. Sunday, January 10th, 9:22. OMG, yes, please. Then Sunday, 10:59, whoever those GoFundMe type accounts are in Sarah's name, she has nothing to do with. Those are 100% scam. She asked me to look into that, and I told her it couldn't happen due to GoFundMe laws. Those are likely scams. Monday, January 13th at 1:35 a.m., she just repeated the same thing. And then the lady you spoke to tonight is nuts. Sarah didn't do any toilet talking or hardened cheese for drugs or whatever. That's quite the imagination. And then I just put, haha, reaction. My comment, I got the sense she didn't follow the case closely. She had experience with her husband being in prison and still retaining his parental rights, which I thought was interesting. So she literally emailed me today after the live with the Florida correctional officer. And then she says, hi, you're up late too. And I go, the cheese thing sounded weird. Maybe a men's prison hustle? I think it was Ida K. I think she mentioned something about like they were smuggling drugs or it was something like bizarre. But again, her reference is men's prison. And so Lana said, maybe. And then I put, my phone was dead and it just beeped. So I'm checking messages. That's in response to her saying I'm up late. She got one thing right. Sarah would take things while cleaning, and I say, LOL, yes. She asked me if I thought less of her by her telling me. I did question mark. About stealing? Yeah. Did she do it for money? She didn't steal from people, mostly for her to use herself, but sometimes for barter. I wasn't sure what she meant by didn't steal from people, maybe by the institution. I mean, stealing is still stealing, right? Like they didn't give it to you. I still want to know what she did with the gloves. Why cut them up? That's why during the inspections, she had a bunch of weird items. Oh, the woman might be right, but Sarah herself never has done anything like that. Someone a while back, this is me now, before trial said Sarah did laundry for other inmates. And now, as I sit here on, what is it, it's May 24th, 2:38 a.m. As I sit here, we know that Sarah did other people's laundry, right? So not only that inmate who was in the chat said that, but then Miss K said it, right? Because they got into it in April of 2024 because one of the COs let Sarah get up and do the laundry. And then Sarah mentions it in her messages, her tablet messages to Christina Pena, because she says, oh, laundry is harder here without you, implying that she's doing bulk laundry and having Christina's extra two hands helped, right? But she would not admit that to Lana, and so Lana stuck by that story. The cheese was a thank you, and even she thought it was weird that people kept giving it to her. Yes, it's true. And then I put, she claimed to be an ex-doormate. So the chat said the cheese, and someone like who was previously incarcerated, they give cheese to rats, snitches, and we know Sarah is a snitch. So maybe with her saying even she thought it was weird, did she or did she know? I don't know how later she then thought it was because she was such a nice person. She says they have done hers too, like they have done her laundry. Sarah has told me that people trade chores and some people like laundry more than other cleaning. I said, I hinted at the gift of cheese during the live. Ada K shot me down quick. And then I just did a laughy face. I heard you. It made me smile. I would totally pick laundry over mopping, I said. I saw it on rebroadcast. Exactly. I guess laundry confuses me if they don't get it returned. Yeah, that's what I don't understand. How are you doing people's laundry? Because there's enough people that said, like, you're sharing underwear. Are they like your clothes for a while? Because how are you having your laundry done? But she did comment, Sarah, in her exchanges with Christina, like they complimented her on the scent of the clothing and the way it was folded. So they're getting something back. This is between you and me, and she would kill me for sharing this with you. Of course she would kill me if she knew you and I were chatting anyways. But I've observed something about her. And then I write, I can't imagine sharing underwear with anyone. She says, no way. That is what the CEO said in my earlier live. Maybe jail is different. Lana, Sarah has a lot of people around her, calls them mates, has a following, but she thinks she is above them all and that she doesn't quite belong there. I say, where does she think she belongs? Lana, she imagines herself as Joseph from the Old Testament in the dungeon for a crime he didn't commit. And then I do the head blowing off emoji and I write, I can't. My brain is going to break. Which I can't even imagine. Like a crime she didn't commit, she recorded it. But I think here, this is like a crack in Lana of like revealing how ridiculous Sarah can be. And who else does she have to tell? Like her husband and her son don't care. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like, I don't know how to explain it. When someone is abused, how they start telling little bits of it just to see what the reaction is. At least that was me. Like when I started to feel things weren't as they seemed in my relationships, I would just say it out loud to someone to see their reaction. Anyway, so she says, sorry, that is one reason she likes our friendship. I have no record. And I say, why do you like your friendship? And then Lana responds, I don't know. and then there's some typos that I'm interpreting as, I see why she is disliked. I'm not blind to her dysfunction or why she went through lawyers or even her relationship with George or her son. There's something about her that I love, and I write fascinating. And like I told you, she has this vulnerability that she fights tooth and nail to hide, but it is there. She does ask me to help her with things she can't do while in prison or jail. But if you ever get a hold of jail phone calls, you'll see what I'm talking about. So I thought it was interesting that she divulged that. And I think maybe in anticipation of the jail calls that she's saying that, because is that normal for her to be asking, especially in Lana's condition? But Lana justifies it because, well, she's in jail. So she asked me to do these things, right? But she's in jail of her own volition. I say, do you want her to explore her vulnerability more? It sounds like there is pain behind it. Lana, there is pain behind it. She idolized her mother, and her mother put off even seeing a doctor until the cancer was too advanced to do anything about it, since they didn't have insurance, and she was primary caregiver to her mom, Sarah's grandma. And that's the other Sarah. Her mom is Karen, and then grandma is Sarah Paulson, or, oh my God, Sarah Catherine Paulson. But she went by Catherine, I believe. I'll be getting the messages for sure. I'm still searching for phone calls. Which messages? The tablet ones? Sheesh, I say. Yes, the jail tablet. Ah, there are a ton, Lana says. Really? I was wondering how many I would get. They barely charged me anything, but I know it will take months to get. They are working on July request. Hey, well, in case you get a hold of mine, I refer to you as the wasp in the room, lol. And then I put, American healthcare sucks. Hospitals don't have to treat you for cancer if you don't have insurance. And then my lol is in response to the wasp. Lana says, they need to treat you since a cancer diagnosis puts you in Medicare. And then she put, sorry, wasp in the room. I dig it. Well, she was pissed I was watching your videos. I was trying to be a friend, so I explained it that if there is a wasp in the room, you don't want to take your eyes off of it. So that's controlling right there, that she's watching the videos, not even speaking to me. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to say. People were like, oh, they broke up because of you. No, not because of me, because Sarah gave Lana an ultimatum of what she could and couldn't do. And Lana put her foot down and said she could do what she wanted to do. And so that Sarah chose, because Lana didn't obey her, that she wasn't going to speak to her. But it started early. Like, she's just watching the videos. I don't even know she exists. Do you know what I mean? I say, I never imagined you all referring to me at all. And I got a cool name. Hells yeah. And then I do the arm strength. I thought that was funny, that I was even a part of their conversation. Girl, you on trial for murder. I don't know why you worried about me. And then she says, ha ha ha, well, James told us about you. And I started watching. Sarah, of course, got pissed that I was watching. So that's how I explained it. If I told her you and I are in contact, it would be Armageddon, exclamation point. And then I put, there are so many people covering her, and she is the first case I covered. Lana says, I would lose my friendship. I know. I'm trying to slowly calm her about you the same way I did about Transparent Tea. And then I put, oh no. So sometimes, as you know, in text, it's a lag. Like, I'm responding to something that she typed before, and then something else comes in because she's typing while I'm typing. So hopefully you guys are tracking this. She started out wanting to sue Transparent Tea, and I changed her mind. I speak to her too. And so I said, lol, yikes, I need to file my LLC. And she says, I would if I were you, lol. I'm not encouraging her to take action against you. So I thought this was interesting because I was kidding. I mean, I do want to start my LLC, but do I think Sarah has the money to sue me? I don't. Like, girl, James is working for free for you at this point that we're talking. Well, he worked for her for free at this point. I also find it interesting because now we're at the part in the tablet messages where she's talking about transparent tea and she's convincing Sarah that she's getting information. So I'm sure that's the conversation about me too, right? And she's getting information. And I give her information, but not always useful for Sarah. Some of it is just for her eyes, like the lease and what the marital agreement was, right? But she was receptive to it. And so I said, it's on my list. No, it's a jungle out here. And she says, in fact, I keep telling her that Florida is a public info state and that she would lose. They are, not sure how to say it, YouTube cannibal. There are, not sure how to say it, YouTube cannibals. So I'm referring to my jungles. And then she says, yes, there are. They fight dirty and I am not a fighter. Had no idea. Well, I should say I'm not a fighter unless I'm attacked. I'm going to defend myself, but I am not like, there's some, y'all, if you only knew, there's some strange things that go on with YouTubers. There's this guy with a beard who does a lot of what you do, and I wondered if he is taking your content. Just last night, though, he credited you. And I say, lazy gamer. She says, yes, that is him. A little husky, got a beard. And I said, I noticed he's credited me twice. Last one, he sounded salty. The one about the handbook I sent you. And I think people were harassing him or something because he was like, he referenced me, but he said it's on the internet, you guys. Like, people have been bothering him about where he got it from. And it was on the internet. I think I got it off of Reddit, maybe. Or I saw it on Reddit, a picture of it, and I looked it up. Like, I don't own the handbook. So, but he did credit me. As you guys know, I like Lazy Gamer. I share stuff with him. We weren't sharing at this point yet. We hadn't like connected personally, but anyway. So she says, yes. And I said, I think it is his job, meaning I think he's a full-time YouTuber. She said, that's the one I saw. The thing is, I say, people will watch us both. There's room for everyone. She says, that's a good way of seeing it. And I say, I totally watch the same content from different creators. I watched Sarah's sentencing on at least 5 channels, and I covered it on mine. I really did watch it. I just like to hear what people have to say. And sometimes I'm going to watch it again anyway. So I'm like, well, let me see what this person had to say. So I think when YouTubers are like, don't watch other people who have the same content, I think it's weird. I think it's old school. Like, YouTube rewards you for keeping people on the platform. So if they see, like, if I link Lazy Gamer's video and send you that way, they can see that, right, in the algorithm tracking, and it will reward my channel for that. Or if you're in my chat and he's there and you go over, it's good for the ecosystem, and it's good for other YouTubers to keep people on the platform because they can't watch one creator 24/7. So if they're not staying on the platform, they're leaving, and YouTube doesn't want that. So anyway, wow, she says, I haven't been able to watch it once. Oh, she hasn't watched the sentencing. I don't think I registered. I'm so embarrassed by my own contribution. And I said, what? You're in it. She says, I hate the way I sound. I say it was surreal. I think we all hate the way we sound when transmitted. It sounds different than the way we normally hear ourselves from the inside and outside. Right? We all sound different when we listen to a recording of ourselves than how we sound like this, just talking. She says, it was amazing talking to you on the phone for over 2 hours. Talk about surreal. What sucks is even Law and Crime misgendered me due to my voice. And then I said, I don't know how you misgender Lana. And I have the eye roll emoji. And Owens referred to you as she. So then she sends a screenshot and the title says, Sarah Boone's pen pal reveals she offered him her kidney. So I say, please don't let the internet bully you. Your voice is fine. She says, don't click on it. Look at the title. And I said, I see it. Remember the day of her plea deal? She says, yes, when she rejected it at the hearing. That had Judge Wooten on the screen. It did. On the lower third, it said Judge Wooten, and it was clearly Judge Cranick. She was like, oh, that's right. I said, they get stuff wrong all the time. It's not you. She said, okay, now I feel better. Excited utterance called me a man woman. I nearly spit my water. It was funny, but it is the curse of my deep voice, I guess. I said, what? This is too meta. She bullied me over my Owens video. She goes, she did? 3 question marks. That is not cool. And I just put par for the course. I am starting to worry, though, now. You mentioned tonight that you don't see an appeal. James insisted he filed it the Wednesday before Christmas. I'm hoping he didn't lie about it. And I say, really? So this is info for me, right? She says, you have skin of steel, talking about par for the course. I said, maybe it appears elsewhere. That is what I'm hoping, she says. I say, I haven't tracked any case to appeal. I could be looking in the wrong place. And she says, between conviction and sentencing, James suffered a really bad family emergency. He showed for the sentencing anyways, but I believe it is the primary reason he shut down his firm. He has begged me not to disclose that emergency, so I can't say what it was, but I still keep in contact with James myself. And then I just said, I hope they are all okay. She says, me too. I wonder what Brian is waiting for. And I say, we don't know if he is waiting. She says, whenever I text him, I have to stop myself from asking a million questions. He would never answer me anyways, as I'm Sarah's friend. And I say, he might surprise you. He usually just leaves me on red, which I don't mind. He only very recently had started replying. One other thing you are right about. She had told me about her work experience that I wondered if she was exaggerating to impress me. So that was the other thing that I had talked about on one of the videos. Like, she overinflates everything. And then I say, that's polite of him. Did she? She says, yes. I said, what was the role? She says she had mentioned being an office administrator. Can you imagine her being an office administrator, y'all? She can't prioritize to save her life. How would she get anything done? That she was running an office. I never asked her what had happened to the job. And I said, did you watch Dr. Warner's testimony? So I'm careful not to outright attack Sarah, right? Because I don't want to alienate Lana. She's told me that there's something she loves about her. So I just try to lay out facts. And then she says, I have never heard of her being a paralegal. And then she says, yes, I have. That's in response to watching the testimony. And then I say, me either. And rumors have a life of their own. Lana says, when she first made pro se, she freaked. Ooh. Excuse me. When she first made pro se, she freaked out and told me she had absolutely no experience in law and thought at first I might have had through being a business owner. I had to tell her no, and that my helping her was the blind leading the blind. If you ever hear that phone call, you'll hear the panic in my voice. And I say, I can only imagine. Anyways, you'll have to let me know when you're ready to hit the sack. I'm a night owl and insomniac, but I don't have a day job outside of staying alive. And then I said, what about the ad? That your idea? She says, some of it, lol. It was her idea to do it as an FU to Cranick. I suggested doing it for real. I told her about some of the lawyers on Court TV being termites who said they thought of taking her on. That's the same. So she wrote it up and told me about it. Before sending it, we had a laugh at the zealous with the side of keen line and the invest in the oppressed. So she did it for real. She didn't think it would get hits. I told her it would. I bet her $20 commissary. I won. And then she has a little icon with her eyes closed and the tongue out. But I sent it to her anyways. LOL. And I said, "Aw, I bet Kranich was relieved that Owens came in. And she says, OMG, most definitely. And then I say, good night. And she says, good night. Good work today. And then 8:06, I respond, thank you, with the little receiving kissy faces. So Monday, January 13th at 12:10 p.m., so lunchtime. Hello, can I send you Hawaii pics? Don't want to make assumptions about your data plan. And then I did the blushy face. So Hawaii pics on the phone. We had talked about my sister and I celebrating our 15-year kidneyversary in Hawaii and my 50th birthday, Hawaii 50. So she says, absolutely. Thanks for asking. My plan is unlimited with sunglasses. Wednesday, January 15th at 1:09 a.m. Reddit is reporting that they changed Sarah's custody level from pending to close, which is one step under maximum or death row. I respond, exclamation points. She has gone dark to me since Sunday. Normally, I hear from her in some form daily. Then she sends me the link to Sarah's profile for the Florida Department of Corrections. Reddit is saying that close means apart from general population under direct armed supervision when outside, ? Yeah, that bitch is dangerous, girl. Danger. Watch yourself. You have Sarah's phone log? Wow, I would love to see that. You probably know how many times she and I have spoken. Often she would call me up to 6 times in succession. Oh yeah, girl, I know. It's about $275 every 15 minutes. The 5-minute calls are generally her free calls, for which, if I recall correctly, she got 1 per week. Just a couple of tidbits you can relay in your broadcast. Best not to credit me. Winky face. I don't think I ever talked about that, but I think she was mindful of like, oh, I'm gonna give her something to put on the broadcast, even though it's on the internet. She doesn't know at this point that I work in television, though. Not that she has to change her vernacular for me, but obviously when you're on YouTube, you're not broadcasting. Okay, Wednesday, January 15th at 10:08 a.m. And I put lol, thanks. On the subway to work, I saw the Reddit thing last night, but didn't get to validate. Sometimes people take a rumor and run. I will email you the logs when I get to my desk. Would you like to see phone and video logs? And she said, OMG, yes, please. And I put X. I responded with exclamation points. We'll email shortly. Everyone is blowing me up about her status change. I haven't had time to research. She says, ha ha ha. Sounds like you have a great network. You can see the status change in her inmate link I sent you on her where it now says close. I did see that, but what I wanted to know was what close was, and I came back. I actually did a video on close. There were more views than I thought. Like, people were really interested in that. Although some people were still like, no, she's not alone and whatever. Anyway, it was, I thought that you never know what people will find interesting. So I think the issue is whether or not close means what people are saying it does. I'm checking my tablet to see if she has responded to me as I told her about the change. I'll let you know if she does respond, exclamation point. Nothing since the 12th. That is the last time she called me to. So what day are we on? We're on the 15th now. That is the last day she called me too. Something is definitely up. She never goes this long without communicating. She actually will call me 3 or 4 times if I don't answer right away. Oh, I know, girl. I'm tempted to call the reception center itself to ask what close means. Yikes. So I think this is what sent me on the rabbit hole of close, because of Lana's curiosity and whatever was happening over on Reddit. So she copies and pastes this. Close custody at the Women's Reception Center in Ocala, Florida means that inmates are held in a secure facility or under armed supervision. Close custody is the most restrictive level of supervision for inmates who are considered high risk. Explanation: inmates in close custody are considered a danger to themselves or others. Perhaps locking someone in a suitcase after throwing them down a flight of stairs and beating them with a bat makes you a danger to others. and not taking responsibility for it. They are closely monitored and have limited access to programs and activities. Inmates may be placed in close custody for disciplinary reasons or for their own protection. So like Stephen Stearns type of situation. Factors that determine custody leave level include criminal history, medical and mental health status, and history of assaultive behavior. Other custody levels include minimum custody. Inmates may be eligible for placement at a community release center. Medium custody. Inmates may be eligible for placement at a work camp with a secure perimeter. Maximum custody. Inmates are under a sentence of death. So close is right in between medium and maximum. And the annex, which is where she is now, has death row inmates there. But they also have Dahlia Dopolito. They have Katie McBanawa. Anybody else? Let me know in the comments who else is in the annex. Donna Adelson will be there if she lives. I'm looking up her bunkmate, Robin Graves, to see what custody levels she has, or her friend, Aline Thomas, who has 2 life sentences, I think. Good Lord. She went in and made the top friends, right? Like the... And are they friends that came over from Leon, or not Leon County, that's Donna, Orange County? Because remember, Lana had said her associates, she came over, she had friends there. So she says, okay, Celine is pending. Robin is pending too. Dahlia Depolito is classified as close too. She is at the annex. And I put, oh, I predicted close in my video about the handbook and everyone gave me a hard time. She says, you were right. I'm asking some mutual associates of ours if they have heard from her in the event she doesn't call me. She usually is talking to me. I found that very strange that they have mutual associates. Lana, who is in Minnesota with no criminal history, Sarah, who's in Florida doing life for murder, have mutual friends. Like that just, how did that not seem strange to Lana? If they haven't heard anything, then I'll be very worried. That's when I'll text Brian. I usually leave him alone unless she asks me to text him or in the event she disappears. So I wonder how many times she's disappeared before. So I said, thinking of disappearing, I was like, well, what could that be? So I said, maybe she's in solitary. And then January 15th, still at 1:35 p.m., she is talking to me now. Thank God she called. I was like, yay, hopefully you feel better after talking to her. I could tell you were worried, right? Because she's running through the list. I haven't heard from her. If I don't hear from her, I've called these associates. Has this happened? If I still don't hear from her, I'm going to talk to Brian. Like it was escalating for her. So then I said, just emailed you the data dump. She said, thank you. And thanks for listening. She is not okay mentally. So we had a phone call in there somewhere. She is not okay mentally today. A lot has been happening in terms of stuff happening in the dorms. And there was a carbon monoxide scare that had everyone up and evacuated almost all night. And I say, yikes, that is a lot going on in their home. Hopefully it quiets soon. Is it ever calm there, I wonder? I can't even imagine. I would be freaking out all the time. I need peace and quiet and no drama in my life. So that would just, ugh. She said, holy crap, you sent me a lot. So I did a big data dump. Phone calls, video logs, I can't remember. I think I sent the commissary funds. I definitely sent all the orders for honey buns and zuzus and wham whams. She says, I wonder that too. Every time she calls me, it's loud as heck there. And I say, one might be a duplicate. Double check the first 2. And I say, my anxiety would be through the roof. And she responds, I know you didn't get this for free. And I respond, and no gummies to microdose? No, no, no. No, 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 no. Hers is through the roof. I spent the whole call calming her down. Ha ha ha. I need to try those sometimes. I have never had THC in any form, and people keep telling me to try it. And I say, good. I'm sure that helps with grounding her. And she says, yeah. Start with CBD if you are serious, I tell her. She was like, I am serious. There's a dispensary that opened up in the same building as my dialysis center. I'm sure that was no accident. Hey? And then I say, I also microdose mushrooms. I get those gummies on Amazon. Mushrooms? What are those like? And I say, talk to the person in the dispensary and let them know the effect you want. Also, research sativa versus indica. It's a different vibe. I like the blended ones myself. The only thing stopping me is that I go to a pain clinic who checks my blood, oral swab, drug test, but they are soon taking THC off of the list of testing. And she says, I will. So as far as I know, if you take CBD gummies, it's not going to trigger a THC test. Either way, I'm in New York. They're legal. THC is legal. But I think she said that because I don't think she knows the difference between the CBD and the THC. And then I put Groons, nootropics, sugar-free mushrooms. And these are nootropics, so it's more for the mind. It's not like a body effect. I like to call myself a biohacker. And yeah, nootropics. Brain supplement gummy for energy, brain health, mood, and focus. And then it goes into all what's in there. And she says, wow, and you get that on Amazon? Question mark, question mark. I didn't know they are legal. That's awesome. And I said, side note, I asked for jail calls. The lady told me to call her. Gulp. And then I responded to her, I didn't know they are legal. That's awesome. Yes, I would not risk my job or custody of my son with illegal substance. And she says, oh, and then good luck getting them. I'm cringing just thinking about some of them. Hey. But I knew they would possibly get out there. And then I sent a picture, but because I did screenshot so that I could redact easier, it flattened it. So it's my little guy with hearts on. She was like, oh, how old is he? He is a sweetheart. It was a video of him at school at pickup time. And then I respond to her comment on the phone calls. I'm wondering why she wants to talk. They usually either mail them to me or send me a link to a SharePoint if the files are very large. But it is not a no, so maybe it is money? Question mark. I'll be crossing my fingers that you get a hold of them. Are they expensive? And I say, I don't know. YouTubers say they are. I live in NYC though, Manhattan. Expensive is relative, you know. I have a real career. Unless it's $1,000 per each month, I am getting them. I was told others have paid by the month. So I asked around for people who have done it. The YouTubers are cagey about it. Like I originally went to phone calls from prison who was like the queen of all phone calls, and she didn't want to tell me. She said she told someone before and they, I guess basically it cannibalized her channel. And then, oh my God, I can't think of her name right now. She does a lot of collabs with Alex. I asked her because she'd gotten the Letitia Stouch phone calls, but it was like a totally different system. It didn't apply. And I know a lot of you guys, it was like, oh, of course you can get him because Wade Wilson's, it's not always, and of course, it's like getting the right person at the right time and having the money. Listen, if you can figure it out, I will pay you for the information so that I can get the calls. But I've tried 6 ways from Sunday. I still have one open because I sent a screenshot from the sidebars in Sarah's case where Mr. J said they did have calls. So maybe that will trigger something. But originally they said there weren't any in discovery. Well, one, they said there weren't. Then they said there were. Then they said on second check there wasn't. And then I sent them the excerpt from the sidebar. So we'll see. She says, I know Zav Girl gets them. She had a ton of them for Shonda Vander Ark. And I said, is she the one with the autopsy of Gannon? And then she replies, but that was in Michigan. And I was like, maybe I will ask her if she got them in Michigan, then Florida should surely release them. I keep getting quotes of a statute of why they can't release them. And then she says she tortured her 15-year-old autistic son and starved him to death in an ice bath. And I said, I saw that trial. That was rough. Good idea. It was her I was expecting to see the calls. And then she said, me too. She and the son are horrible human beings. No chance in hell I'd ever contact her. And I said, I meant the YouTuber Zab. I'm not contacting the killer. Maybe she did mean contacting Zab, but who knows? I don't like people who can hurt kids. And she says, oh, I knew. I have never contacted any other inmate except my aunt, who was also convicted of second-degree murder for stabbing her boyfriend in a drunken fight. She got out in 8 years, Minnesota, and I put exclamation point reaction. She was sentenced to 15 to 40 years. It was shortened to 11, and she got work release to a halfway house after 8. Holy smokes, I'm looking over the October 2024 phone logs. That cost me a lot of money. That was during the trial and afterwards too. So see, things are coming together. Even though she's already paid that phone bill, she's like realizing how much it was in January, how much it was back in October that she would have paid, or whatever the billing period is. She said there were 2 calls on 10/25/24, one at 10:46 and the second at 11:01. That was the night of her conviction. The calls I told you about where she begged me not to leave her. The following day, I think we spoke for an hour and a half. So yeah, she said that night. And then she also, Lana was saying that she was trying to cheer her up about appeals and whatever. I wish, like, obviously it's their friendship, but like, I wish she would have told her, like, girl, did you really think that that black eye photo was going to be the winner for you? And I said, did you tell Sarah about your friend? What was her defense? 8 years beats life any day of the week. Yeah, my aunt. Yes, I did. Oh, your aunt, mea culpa. LOL, lol, no worries. Why didn't she take the deal based off that alone? She said Sarah should have been from Minnesota. She believed she was innocent, or at the very most culpable negligence. She thought that the jury would see the marks on her and think that it was either her or George who would have eventually died as a result of their toxic relationship. And so him dying was better than her dying. Like, what juror is going to come to that conclusion? Oh, it's okay, she killed him because he was bound to kill her. Not according to all the video evidence. He was like a whipped dog, a little puppy, poor thing. Just really not understanding the danger he was in. She believed she couldn't get away because George would break back into her house or sleep on her patio or do whatever it took to be there. Remember when Sarah on Cross told Mr. J she didn't think he would break into her house?
And it was your townhouse, correct?
Mine, yes. Flush hours.
When did you get him off the lease?
I'm not sure what year it was, but I don't think he was actually removed from the lease.
Okay.
I think he was made a different type of tenant.
And guess what, boys and girls? Sarah is lying. Let's put some respect on George Torres Jr.'s name. He was on the lease right alongside Sarah. Here is the lease that was dated January 16th, 2020. Here's Sarah Catherine Boone. Right next to her is George Torres Jr. as a resident. List all people signing the lease. And you'll see down here, her son is listed as an occupant. So he had the same rights and privileges that she had. Their rent was $1,139. You will see they were provided with 2 apartment keys, 2 mailbox keys. Remember, Sarah is only receiving $1,100 a month from Brian, $1,000 for alimony, $100 for child support. So with rent of $11.39. She does not qualify financially for this apartment on her own income. In addition to that, they are also required to pay some of the utilities, including water, sewer, and trash, to the tune of $58 a month, bringing their total monthly responsibility for that apartment, or town home, as she liked to say, to $1,197. But it doesn't stop there. I know you guys like to make fun of me when I say were her family heirlooms on her insurance policy, and everyone's like, they didn't have insurance. Well, their lease required them to have insurance, and if they failed to purchase their own insurance, then the property managers would charge them $50 and take out insurance for them on a monthly basis. So their monthly obligation for the townhome was $1,247. And this was e-signed on the 23rd of January, or submitted, which I'm assuming is also signed, 1/23/20, which was exactly 1 month prior to when she murdered him on 2/23/20. So whatever she's talking about is not true. There's Melissa Sexton, the property manager's e-signature. And that is why Melissa did not honor any of the subpoenas and come to trial, because she would have had to admit on the stand, because I know Mr. J would not have missed this, that George was in fact on the lease and that Sarah should not have been changing the locks, at least not in 2020. There was a time where she had a protective order that was then changed to, instead of no contact, to no, I want to say felonious, but I think it's like harmful contact, or no, yeah, like, he couldn't be around her and hit her. And so that is what's that on the lease. But yet she had everyone else. She told that to the police during her interrogations. He would help out a bit with the water bill or whatever. Lies. All lies. And we know Brian was giving her money whenever her bank account was in the red, because who was buying the handles? Who was buying those cigarettes? Ma'am, if you don't stop playing, okay, go ahead, Mr.
Did you change the locks so that he couldn't get back in at the points of times when you picked him out?
I did sometimes.
And then would you leave the key in the hiding spot that he was aware of?
There were multiple hiding places.
Okay. On any of the 911 calls, did you ever mention that Mr. Torres was aware of where you kept your keys and that's how he got back into the house?
I didn't know I needed to.
Okay.
He would never break into my home.
But yet she told Lana multiple times that he broke in, because here, break back in implies he had done it before.
He would never break into my home.
Or sleep on her patio, or do whatever it took to be there. She was the one sleeping on patios. Unless, you guys correct me, do you remember a time when George slept on a patio? Anybody reported that other than Sarah? Like a reliable narrator. The jury foreperson said in that text interview that Sarah could have kept him in the suitcase and called the police if she feared for her life. That was why she was convicted. It wasn't a her or him, right? No logical person would be like, well, she killed him before he could kill her. In that moment, her life was not in danger. She was no stranger to calling 911. I think she had them on speed dial. She was pressing 9. And then I said, wait, the foreperson said that? Where? And then I said, it's true. She had other options, and there was no way to overcome that cackling. And she was... everything you... oh, well, shut up then. You might want to shut up. Oh my God. It was in a Facebook group chat. I think I have it, as someone sent it to me, which later we would find out that was Nicole that sent it to her. Let me see where it is. I was like, what? Please do. I want to reach out and see if they will speak. Maybe unidentified. Sure, I have to text Billy and see if he can get the names of the juror. He has them and Sarah wants them, but I'm dubious as to whether he will release them to me. Girl, he ain't releasing that. Wow. Does she want to write them, I say? I think she does, Lana said. I say, I'm curious about deliberations. I really want to talk to Juror 3. Please don't let her write them. It could impact her appeal. The guy who answered quickly, yep. I'll tell her that. She believes that what the foreperson said will help her appeal. I don't know why she believes writing anybody is good for her. It just makes her look like an ass. Stop writing letters, Sarah. And then I said, oh, before I forget, we need to start looking at the appeals court docket. It is 6th District Court of Appeals, the PI Sam told me, Florida PI Sam. She used to be on Sarah's case and now has a channel. She says, oh, when you said Billy, it reminded me. And so she says, I found the interview. I'm emailing it to you. And then I respond to, I'll tell her that she believes what the foreperson said will help her appeal. And I said, how? She wasn't in imminent danger, which is what they were asked to consider. The foreperson was talking about doubts. Something excited Sarah. So these are all flattened. And she says, actually, I'm going to text you these. I think that's all of it. Sorry about, oh God, hold on. Please hold. So this is some sort of, I guess, a text interview. I'm not sure with the jury person, but so she said she found it. She was emailing it to me. And she responded to, or I responded to her saying, I'll tell her that she believes that what the foreperson said will help her appeal. And I respond, how? She wasn't in imminent danger, which is what they were asked to consider. So the whole thing with like battered spouse is you can enter that as a defense to show how your reaction might not be on par with someone who hadn't suffered from battered spouse syndrome. But it doesn't change the law, right? You can't say, well, first of all, her reaction is weird, like objectively, right? She's in fear of her life, so she won't let him out of the suitcase. His little fingers, by her own words, coming out are what instigated her not letting him out, although they had been having fun before. And then she was so frightened for her life that she wouldn't let him out, but then she went upstairs and slept like a baby for about 10 hours, even though, you know, it could be 12 hours, but she's like, oh, I was up before that, but I didn't get out of bed. Okay, ma'am. Yeah, so she doesn't get to rewrite it. I don't know how she thought that the jury person saying she wasn't in imminent danger could help her. So the foreperson was talking about doubts, something excited Sarah, and then she sent these in a text. She said, I think that's all of it. Sorry about the order. And she said, I think KF is the jury person. And I said, thank you. And she says, you're welcome. Ah, these were before sentencing. And she says, yes. So obviously after a verdict, before sentencing. So I said, if she had fallen asleep and it really was a good day, then I could see negligent homicide due to the self-administered alcohol. And she said, Sarah's friend Nicole from Australia sent them. They are found in a Facebook group. I don't know which one. And Lana says, right. The video really clinched it. Right. So, and they tried to cover it up because then it was like the fingers made her upset. And so then she turned the camera back on, and that's why she was angry. She was angry long before that camera came on. She was angry sending him down the stairs. She was angry beating him with the bat. She was angry zipping him up. Like, how do you explain all the injuries if it was such a good day? She can't because she's blackout drunk, but we know who Sarah is, like how she responds to things. So clearly she was upset and seeking revenge, as she does in all things. She had to show him she was right. She had the upper hand, and she didn't need to call the police that night because she didn't need to put the fear of God or the fear of police or any fear. She didn't need any help in doing it. She had it covered that night. The other nights he was, you know, getting a little unwieldy, so she had to hit that 911. But that night, she was good. And how do I know? Because she went upstairs and slept like a baby. Okay. So something was in there about her brother, and I was like, why does the juror know about her brother? ? And she was like, that's a fantastic question. And I said, that's not relevant, and it's more prejudicial than probative. It's not probative at all. I'm just following the law. I know some people are going to come for me, but just like they shouldn't have brought George's brother into consideration, they shouldn't have brought Sarah's brother into consideration. Like, those are separate and aside from what happened that night. And it's only about that night. So she says, good point. I'm guessing the juror did a lot of watching news and YouTube and saw what people were saying about SB. She wouldn't have known what Brian had said about her being physical with him, i.e. her claws. Lol. I shouldn't laugh, but I get a picture of Sarah, the crypt keeper, every time I hear it. And I commented with the ha 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 response from my iPhone. She said, just texted Billy about the jury. I'd be shocked if he could give me the identities. I keep telling Sarah that it usually doesn't happen due to retaliation threats, right? Or death threats or actual death. I mean, yeah, that's crazy. And I put exactly. So January 15th, 4:24 p.m., she already forgave them. Best to leave well enough alone. Does Billy know jury members attended sentencing? I heard somewhere there. So I thought this was telling, too, that Lana is able to text Billy. She's texting Owen. She's texting Billy. A little bit, you'll see she's texting Kevin when we get into the appeal part. Excuse me. She doesn't text Henderson. But like, she was on the team, you know what I mean? She was in the fold. This has been incredibly stressful today. I can't imagine what you are going through as her friend. Bless you for being a friend to her. I am sure it helps her mentally. I feel like Lana was taking on a hell of a lot of stress, very much taxing her adrenals. You guys know the adrenals are attached to the kidney, right? I still have two. I talked to the doctor about it. They kept them both intact, even though we removed one kidney. They're important. But I was concerned for her physically. Obviously, she's an adult, but just saying that, one, to let her know I was thinking about it, but also hopefully to encourage her to think about it for herself. Okay, so Saturday, January 18th, 11:54 p.m. Hi, Tanika. I haven't been able to watch your latest bad boy videos yet. Rough dialysis day. But the more I think about it, the more the question is answered. What kind of lawyer would answer Sarah's ad? I wonder if their true goal was redemption. We can talk after I watch, eh? Anyways, I hope you are having a good afternoon. And Sunday, 9:44, I was thinking about you. Didn't want to be a bugaboo. And she says, oh, you could never be. Seriously, text me anytime. I'm sorry I missed your show. And I said, I can send you the document if you would rather read it. It's pretty awful and obviously a pattern with those two. And she said, please. And so I did a thumbs up. Don't be sorry. All good. I hope you are feeling better. She said, thanks. Yes, I am. I took off too much fluid and tanked my BP. Has your sister ever talked about crashing? So the crashing is, yeah, they took off too much fluid, tanked her BP. Her body thinks that it is her organs are shutting down. So the body preserves all of the blood just for the organs and basically knocks you out to keep you alive. It sounds horrendous. I've never been through it, but it just, yeah, your whole body is freaking out trying to save your life. So I said, they have been friends at least since high school. They played football together, Owens and Henderson. She says, yes, that is what he said to me. James has disappeared off the face of the earth. I text him on occasion and he leaves me on red. I'm hoping he concludes whatever he is up to. And then I said, I don't remember anything about crashing since she was exhausted all the time. I remember they tried an alternative where there was something in her abdomen cavity. It's been a while though. That was like 2004 or 2005. So my sister actually ended up having seizures from dialysis. And then I remember one time, I don't know if it was technically a crash in the way that Lana is having them, but they had to put her in a medical coma. to let her body recover, it was crazy. I don't remember why they had to drill a hole in her head to get excess fluid off, but I can't remember why she had excess fluid on the brain. Like, just being in renal failure is a bitch. Like, it is an absolute bitch. I think the people who go through it are very courageous. And Lana was like my sister in that she didn't complain about it. She wore it well. It reminds me when I was little, my great grandma would say about hard times, you just got to get through it, baby. You just got to get through it. And that's like the kind of spirit that Lana had, and my sister, like, just get through it. Don't make a big deal out of it, which is, I don't know if I could. I'm a big baby. I'm going to tell you right now, like, somebody would have been listening to me in pain or holding my hand or something, because, oh yeah. I said, I received the info on Owens when he first got the case. I didn't make a video because I was worried. I put must, but I think I meant I might disrupt the relationship of Owens and Sarah. Yeah, and that is true. I was worried about it because you know how she finds out tidbits about things and then she turns that on them. Like, I don't know if you guys remember with Bankowitz being non-responsive. It's one of her friends. I don't think it was Lana, because I don't think Lana was around then, but someone told her he had received disciplinary action or a complaint to the bar for being non-responsive or slow to respond. And she threw that in one of the letters. SKR has all the letters if you guys haven't read them. I did not do her letters to Wooten. But so I was worried that it somehow would get, and I was like, so glad that Owens was on and did not want him to be off the case. So I waited. I made a conscious decision to wait till after it was all said and done. So she said, she did peritoneal dialysis. I did that for a couple of years. The catheter impacted my colon and I had to have emergency surgery, and I did exclamation point. Yeah, it's where they put it in the peritoneum. She did that for a while, but it didn't work out for her and they took it out. It sounds easier though, because you don't have to go through to the dialysis center at the same time. Like, imagine being 20 years old and having to go sit with older people and like people are crashing and dying around you, right? Because that's what happens. Like, if they can't get you back on with the crash, like, people die. I think it might be a phone call. At some point, someone died while Lana, either she was arriving or she was there, but she had to wait. But someone, while she and I were, in contact, someone died at dialysis. She said, that was very kind of you. I had not a clue the entire time. And I was like, what were the odds of another attorney? And I meant stepping on if Owens was scared off. Like, we needed Owens there. The Torres family needed Owens there. Can you imagine? Like, just think of Lori Vallow Daybell, when she was like, cross-examining Kay, the sister of Charles, of her victim. Imagine, I feel like Sarah would have been calling up George's mom, his sister, the exes, maybe his oldest daughter. It just would have been a shit show. I mean, it was already crazy with 3-4 attorneys on, 3 who filed a notice of appearance. You know? I didn't want to risk it. I didn't want to be a part of anything like that might impact that relationship or her behavior toward him. Not that I have that much influence, but just in case, you never know. Like, it just takes a penny to ripple the whole pond, or a pebble, I should say. Don't put pennies in ponds. A pebble to ripple the whole pond. She said, we likely would have had a pro se trial. By the way, Sarah just wrote and filed another motion. So I said, that would have been a nightmare. Imagine the cross exams of Brian and the neighbors. Oh yeah, Brian. She would have gone in on the alimony. She didn't tell me what it was, but asked me to watch her case. And then Lana goes, right. Or Copsel or Brian, OMG. And I was like, did you see the video of a woman claiming to be a childhood friend of Sarah's? She hadn't even heard of the case until the YouTuber reached out to her. And she goes, was her name Brandy? And I responded to, she didn't even tell me what it was, but asked me to watch her case. And I was like, question mark, watch what case? Question mark. And then Lana said, where is this? Sarah has asked me to find her. Her closed case. I don't know where it will show up in. She said first draft is 28 pages. And then I said 6th District Court of Appeals. What? I must find this ASAP. She says, yeah, I'm supposed to tell her when it shows up. I can't see the 6th District Court of Appeals. And would they post it on a closed criminal case? Just got your email. Thank you. I said, let me dig around. And she goes, holy crap. And I say, it may take time to be received, ellipse. And she says, I wonder if Kevin Becky was in this. It just sent me over 70 pages. I wonder why they weren't criminally charged. And I said, Kevin had financial fraud. I didn't see any sexual allegations against him. Just read the first 5 or so, or just read the first 5 or so. You'll get the gist. Yeah, and I didn't read all 70 pages of my video. It was too much. I mean, even when I read, like, later, I just thought, oh my God, that was so much. It was just like I had an ick, like an imaginary oily ick afterwards on that one. And I say, the woman they assaulted eventually killed her lover and herself. She says, what? So did this happen or was this a false accusation? I said, I don't know. It's very detailed. This happened before Owens was elected to the office of public defender. And she goes, oh my God. What was the reaction of your members to this when you shared with them? I'm planning on viewing today. I said, people didn't seem surprised. Some were offended that I did a comical reading. Humor is how I cope, though. And she says, I also am curious as to why the name of the victim is redacted. If they had gone to trial, she would have been revealed, which is not always true. Sometimes, I mean, as we've seen, I think in one recent case that was dropped, it turned out to be a fraud, allegedly. But against Diddy and, oh my God, Jay-Z, that woman's name wasn't revealed. So then I put, they mentioned her in a news article after her death. And she said, I don't blame you. They should have known if the content was triggering to them. And then I said, I don't know how that works, though. Like the Jay-Z victim. And she said, that's a good point. Was the woman a minor? This was the 90s when women were blamed for wearing revealing clothing. And I said, no, she was 28. She said, yeah, the 90s, the era of Anita Hill. And then I said, the minor, the 13-year-old, happens after Owens was elected. And then she wrote, whom I believed. And I put a heart there because I believed Anita Hill too. Clarence Thomas still makes my stomach turn, I said. She said, me too. And I said, he kind of reminds me of Henderson, come to think of it. And I meant in appearance. She said, I agree. I never met or spoke to Henderson apart from receiving group emails during the trial and before it while strategy was being discussed. Oh, I would love to see those emails. And then I said, did he sound competent? I think he screwed up big time not attending the depots with the doctors or reading the transcripts. He missed the mark on the fingers coming out. Not that he should have encouraged her to lie, but it was like they were scrambling on the overt act. Like, I don't think Owens realized there needed to be an overt act. He just thought the BSS was going to be enough. But I feel like Henderson, surprise, surprise, was well versed in battered spouse and assaulting people. Or how to defend them, I guess I mean to say. The fingers was like, are you guys really gonna put that in front of a jury? But they did. I mean, good for us, good for George that they did. So Lana says he had very few words beyond thanks or receive the doc. Sarah liked him, but I was a bit uneasy. Oh yeah, Sarah was chatting his ear off in there. I was like, oh my God, I hope she had a breath mint because she was like I hope Sarah knows how lucky she is to have you, OMG. She was chatty with him. He was a good babysitter. And she says, haha, thanks. And I said, I was over Henderson after that Zoom appearance. Where was he looking? Like at one point there was a camera at his crotch. And then it was like, have you not used Zoom before, sir? Like we've been using it for a couple years since the pandemic. Hello. She said, yeah, I had nothing to say to him. I only spoke with James. And I said, I did cover the 13-year-old girl he impregnated when he first came on the case. Because I did one on each of them. I can't remember what my dirt was on Owens in the beginning, but you guys who've been here for a minute will remember Beck had the financial fraud, and then he kind of threw his daughter under the bus, and then the 13-year-old with I don't think I said anything bad about Owens because I think I wanted him to stay, but I put him on the thumbnail because it was like the Three Stooges at first, and then I ended up changing that. But I think the one dirt I had on Owens when he first came out was that he was known for plea deals. So I was like, that's where he's aiming. But I didn't like dig up anything that Sarah could weaponize. She goes, why was he not arrested? ? Exclamation mark. I mean, they didn't live in Kentucky. I don't know if that's legal in Kentucky. I wasn't sure what that reference meant. And she said, that's just foul. It can't be, right? Are there states where you can have sex with 13-year-olds legally? Don't tell me if there are. I don't want to know. I take that back. And so I respond, power and influence. Men got away with it for years. It was pervasive. And she said, it couldn't be more cut and dry evidence, though. One DNA test, the smoking gun. What happened to the child? And I said, right? A simple blood draw puts it all to rest. Exactly. He could have done a lot of time. He should have. Do you remember the name of the channel that had the game show footage of Sarah and John, ex-Katrina or something? She said it was Nickelodeon. She did the interview. I can't remember her channel name to send you the link. She has the weird curtains on the wall with no window. The streaming, I will have to check. I think it was Paramount Plus. I'll have to check. And then she does ? And I said, can I call you? And I did the 2 laughy faces. She said, sure. And then Sunday, 12:08, she says, haha, I think you butt dialed me, laughy face. And I said, oh no, apologies. And she said, no worries. I just said, hello, my true crime lovelies, lol. And I put ha 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 as the reaction. And I said, about to throw my phone out the window, trying to get my scripts refilled, and the automated system keeps misunderstanding. And I said, she says, geez, I know that annoyance. Walgreens is my frenemy. Good luck. And then I just did the reaction of being loved, and she did a heart on there. And Sunday, 2:09, she says, TikTok has returned. Shortest ban in history. And I laughed, and I said, I wonder what happened. And then I said, happy Friday. Sorry to bother you. I'm not able to find this woman in Florida on Facebook with a picture that matches the screenshot. Do you know anything else about her? Was this a group chat or something private? Tried to do an image lookup, but I am hitting walls. And I did I think that's the death face. With the X's across the eyes. And she says, I'm not sure. I will text Nicole from Australia, Connecticut, VoIP, Sarah's friend who made her aware of the group, and ask her your questions. At 10 a.m., she texted me and said it was 3 a.m. there. Yikes. Hopefully she isn't asleep. And happy Friday too. 3 a.m. in Connecticut. And happy Friday too. And I said, yikes, it's not urgent. Trying to get some research done before I pick up Sugar Bear from school. She says, no worries. I'll let you know what she says. And I was like, thank you. I'm curious as to when she learned about John Tyler. If she learned prior to deliberations, that's an automatic new trial. And I'm saying, because I know I'm going to get flack for this, after being selected prior to deliberations, maybe not an automatic new trial, but a reason to ask for a new trial, like they need any. And she says, what do you mean automatic new trial? The fact that Kranick resides over John Tyler is a conflict of interest, ? And I said, the Kranick thing, I'm not sure. She mentions that Sarah's brother might be a pedo, but she didn't verify. And she says, right. And I was like, jurors are not to do outside research. She says, OMG. That was not included in the trial. Obviously, she could have, because I don't know when she learned of that, because I don't want to get all the jury people upset with me. This could be incorrect is what I'm saying. So who researched that and told her? No, it sure wasn't. Good question. She said someone told her, but she didn't verify. But did she research after the trial was over? OMG. So that is what could have happened, right? Who told her and when? You know, that old journalistic thing. When, how did she know and when, or what did she know and when, or whatever the hell they say. and then it's capital OMG. That's what we need to find out. And she said, I'm afraid to tell Sarah yet and give her false hope. I don't know why that would be false hope other than, I don't know. They would have to question that juror first. There would have to be a lot of things happening. It's not like they would overturn her conviction. She still wouldn't be free, even if they did. If it was before deliberations, that's jury misconduct. If she were researching on Sarah's background before deliberations, but after being seated. She was focused on her deliberation, but like myself, that went over her head. And then I said, have to be very careful. And she says, that is big. Yeah, I'd like to know who this is because that juror could lie, but you have the screenshots. She says, yep, and it still could be grounds. It sounds like the jurors discussed this, though, the way it is worded. Yeah, yes, she says, that's not good. And she makes a point that she didn't research it, so someone told her. And she says, OMG, I need to talk to Nicole, exclamation point. It seems fishy, right? I say. And she says, I don't know the group this came from, but she does. And she was like, yes, it does. And I said, maybe she can send her a private note. Lana says, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to say anything to Sarah herself yet, unless there's something more concrete. Right. Thank you. Also, what makes her say that the Torres family was a good family? What does that have to do with the facts of the case? And she says, holy crap, how did I miss this? And I said, it's hard to tell because I'm eavesdropping, but it seems suspect to me if they agreed to be impartial, then went digging up facts not in evidence. Yeah, because there was nothing entered into evidence either way about them being good or bad. But the family being good does not have anything to do with that evening, is what my point was, because I know some people are going to come for me. I'm just going through the law part of it. And she says Sarah was talking about this person having doubts about murder. And so that is what I was focused on. OMG, if something comes of this and she gets a new trial or wins an appeal or something, I will tell her you found it. And I was like, no, I don't want to be a part of the story. She says, oh, okay. She was like, thank you. I'll keep you out of it. But it seems really huge if this is all true. And she had info she shouldn't have had. I was like, but maybe get it to her appeal attorney or Billy Lane? And she was like, yes. I said, we need someone with bigger tools than we have. Us little internet non-attorneys. She said, I will. Yeah, it would be nice to talk to the juror. And I put a heart on there. But yes, my first text should be to her friend from Australia who found this. I wonder, I don't know if she and I ever talked about what the number was she was texting for Nicole. I said, I don't know why, but I have a strong sense she will get a new trial. Hopefully she doesn't go with BSS and dragging George, or she takes a plea. Right. What do you think? You have really good insight. What would be a good defense? I mean, between you and me, it wouldn't be justice if she walks, but manslaughter or negligent homicide. And I was like, either the jury, the forfeiture of counsel, or the denial of a continuance. Right. I wish I had a law background. And I said, at the very least, I believe the appellate court hears oral arguments. She says, wow. And I said, because the forfeiture / waiver is very unique, I think the court will want to acknowledge its lawfulness or lack thereof. Yeah, I've seen it with either or. Cranick covered all bases and put both. I just feel like they would want to, the appellate court would want to like codify that, you know? Do I think it'll be this? I don't even think I answered that. Manslaughter or negligent homicide. I mean, maybe negligent homicide, but just the way she comes across, it feels intentional. It doesn't, to me, it just feels like she was going to show him. But, you know, I have all this other background information on Sarah that a juror wouldn't have, but vengeance is hers. And then I said, I still can't find what her appeal attorney filed. I will search this weekend and then call the court on Monday if I can't find it. She says, thank you. I couldn't find the thing either. And I said, I sent the attorney an email. Crickets. And she says, OMG, Josh Abrams. I have tried to get a hold of him to no avail. Probably a lot of folks reaching out. The lady at the jail said she has been getting nonstop requests. So why not the attorney too? True. Poor lady at the jail. And then I said Adams, because that's Josh's last name. And then I believe I put his email there. And she said, that's the one. I'll email them too. Just sent him another email asking if he could just, I think, send me what he filed. And then I did a laughy face because he probably is like, bitch, who are you? Sorry, Josh. I don't know how you speak. And she said, excellent. And I was like, can't hurt. The worst he can do is block me. I'm going to call the court now. And she was like, let me know. You have that awesome disc jockey voice. And then I just laughed, put the laughy faces in there. And I was like, she asked me how to spell Sarah's first and last name. So not a lot of calls yet. And then she put the sunglasses and the microphone, 2 sunglass happy face emojis and the microphone. She said, not if she needed it spelled. And I said, didn't find anything under her name. She asked for the lower court case number. And I put, I'm so nervous. And she said, I am too now. I'm pulling up the email from James saying that Margaret filed it. And I was like, she filed the request for transcripts, right? Judicial acts to be reviewed on 12/18? He should send you copies of everything. I don't know why I said that because she is not his client. But I was like, you need to lay eyes on them. And then she sent me the message from James here. And I say, that says notice of appeal. So that at least preserves her appeal rights. And she said, right. So that wasn't the appeal. I don't know what is supposed to happen next. So it definitely wasn't the appeal. It couldn't have been the appeal. There was no way they were going to be filing the appeal at that point. But when I called the Orange County Clerk of Courts, they were like, there's nothing. And that turned out to be an error. So she says, who's supposed to do it and where? I'm just Sarah's friend, ! I wouldn't know whose responsibility it is. And James has fallen off the face of the earth, not answering phone calls, texts, and emails. It's as if he is dead. His business has been pulled down. And what motion did Sarah write? I haven't seen it. So she's panicking there. And I said, where did she mail it? Clerk is saying there is not a notice of appeal. So that's when we knew something was wrong because she has this one document that says notice of appeal that came from James's office, having been sent by Margaret. But Clerk is saying it's nothing and it's not showing up on the Clerk of Court's website. So we were like, where did it go? So she says, not a clue. I'm going to ask her if and when she calls me. According to James, it happened and Sarah got a copy. Sarah hasn't seen anything. So this is when I recorded the video calling the clerk, I think. And I said, working from home, ignore my appearance. I played this in one of the videos for you guys. And she was like, you look great. The video won't play. And I said, I recorded part of it. When I get nervous, my memory isn't great. And then I put drats. She says, I'm in a ton of pain, so I'm not really presentable either. And I said, let me email. I think she sent me a picture at that point. Let me email it. I'm sorry you are in pain. I hope I haven't spiked your adrenals. Apologies if so. And she said, haha, what is that music? And then she says, I got it. You are one freaking fast typist, and this whole music is trippy because I'm typing as I'm on hold. If you've seen the video, you know. And I said, I was texting you while I was waiting. Then I was talking to myself to see if she could hear me. And she says, I'm pretty upset if this is the case. Did you get my copy of the email James sent? ? Through Margaret. And then I said, I finally just put myself on mute. My sister told me when on hold, the person can still hear you. So I did 2 laughy faces. I'm such a weirdo. And then I said, I did. Where did she file it? ? Haha, that is true in some cases. I don't know. The email I forwarded you is the total extent of everything I know. It took me having a bit of a nervous breakdown just to get them to respond to me because it was 9 days until the appeal deadline at that time and I hadn't been able to get through. I honestly don't have a clue what to do. So then I said, so when is 30 days from the order? And she says, it has to be passed by now. Did they lie to me? Because the order was December 2nd. The time it was filed seemed pretty exact. And so then I did a screenshot of the Clerk Records website. This was filed on 12/18, which I wonder if I can ask JAC for those transcripts or maybe the court clerk. There is no response. And she says, did you get my email? Yeah, it's like 5 p.m. I'm sure everyone is closed now. And I was like, this is so sloppy. I'm sure they are closed. She said, yeah, what can we do until Monday now? And then I said, what about Kevin Beck? He's in Arizona, right? And she said, I don't know what to tell Sarah. Arizona? What? And I said, did she ask? Maybe stall until Monday. And then I spelled out Arizona because I was thinking maybe the AZ was confusing her. She said, what the heck is going on with all these lawyers? It's like they scurried back into the darkness. And then I said, New Mexico. And I sent a screenshot, I think, of his bar thingy. And then she said the notice of appeal was filed on Sarah's behalf on Wednesday, December 18th, 2024, and a copy was mailed to her. That's what she's posted. And then she said, what site are you using? And I said, maybe the clerk was wrong to check these people out. That is the Florida bar side, I tell her. She says, but they would have a Florida lawyer practicing in New Mexico. And I put New Mexico has 2 time zones, but either way, it isn't 5 there. She was like, or AZ. Yep. I think she was confused here. He was licensed in Florida, but he moved to New Mexico. And because the case was in New Mexico, because the case was not in New Mexico, I didn't check. So I tell her, he's licensed in Florida. Let me check New Mexico bar. She was like, do you have a phone number? He is the only one I haven't called. I'll call him right now and see if he knows anything. Oh, please hold. Yikes. Okay, so I gave her his phone number that I forgot to redact. So sorry if that was funky. So she says, but that is Margaret's email. Either it's somewhere we don't know or she lied. And I said, I wonder if it was filed in the wrong court. There is that filing on 12/18. It went to Kranick though. Should it have gone to both? He's asking for transcripts. And then I took a video of something and then I said, gotta go get Sugar Bear from school. She said, okay, I'm on with Kevin. And then I said, why is everything always a problem with this case? How hard can this be? Someone screwed up. And she said, I agree with you. I got to get some groceries, but I'll let you know what he told me. Have fun with Sugar Bear. What a cutie. And I said, will do. We just got back. So Sunday, January 26th at 11:58. Good morning. Getting ready to create a video about not being able to find her appeal. Did Beck have any insight? It's almost unbelievable. And she says, hey there. He did actually. It was funny when I called him and started my introduction. Hi, Kevin. We've never spoken, but I'm Lana Albert, a friend of Sarah Boone's. And he only let me get my first name out and said, I remember your name. I guess I've been expecting to talk to you. And I responded with 2 exclamation points. And she says, I was like, what? Question mark, exclamation point, question mark. And he laughed into a whole thing, he launched into a whole thing, which I believe he blamed himself for why Sarah lost. I was like, it was like I had stepped into a confession, and that is not why I called him. He was saying that he didn't know why James had chosen not to speak to a few other specialists. I have written them down. I just shut up and pulled out my iPhone notebook and started writing what he was telling me. Anyways, he said that in effect, Kranick asking Sarah if she intended to appeal and the hiring of an appellate lawyer, even though there have been 2 and they're not working, question mark, question mark. I don't get that part. Anyways, he said the courts parents are expecting Sarah to appeal. We just need a lawyer that actually is an appellate lawyer. James, by his disappearance, is dropping the ball. I couldn't get a word in edgewise to ask Kevin if he could do all of that, considering that he also filed a notice to appear. Oh, if Kevin could do it because he had filed a notice of appear, like, could he file the actual request for an appeal? He did say I could call him anytime, and so I plan to do that once I speak to Sarah. I haven't gotten to, as she told me, she is extremely sick and in her words is barking like a seal. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to bombard your text window. I'll shut up now. But hi, Sarah kind of gave me the all stop in speaking to anyone until she recovers. I haven't spoken to her in a week via phone. It's all been messages. So then I say, so the second lawyer is not an appellate attorney? People told me he was, and I was confused. The gaslighting is real. She said, I don't know. You and I have called for him, and it's been crickets. I don't have a clue how that works, even works. Have, world. So basically, I don't have a clue how that world even works. No apologies needed. As soon as I typed that, Sugar Bear pulled me into the living room to show me something Elma related. That is why my response is delayed. And she said, I want to help Sarah for sure, but I signed up to get to know her and be friends. That is not what happened. In all this, I feel like I am letting her down. Oh, Sugar Bear. By the way, it's smart you referred to him as a nickname online. I am impressed. And then I said, if you are her genuine friend, how are you letting her down? Don't be hard on yourself. She said, I feel like I'm not getting anywhere for her. I tell her other friends to sign up for communication and they don't. With the appeal, I don't know what I'm even doing or what to ask for. So I said, so Beck thought Harper was questionable. I liked Dr. Brandon. He just did not examine her. I think because Mr. J protested, not sure. Something happened there, or his appearance on court TV might have come into evidence where he was like, she don't have a chance. She said, you are 100 times better at research than I am, and she thinks I'm some sort of miracle worker. Well, Brandon wouldn't take Sarah on because of the time issue. Becky talked over and over about time issues. That's Kevin Beck. I don't know why she calls him Becky. I think it's funny though. He told me to have Sarah use it. I think they probably had nicknames for everybody, but she didn't share that with me. But I think Becky just made it over the line for her to share. He told me to have Sarah use him to call for ineffective representation of counsel because it's one of the most winnable grounds for appeal. I tried to tell him he didn't do anything wrong and it wasn't his fault. And he kept cutting me off and saying that she had to use him. If anything, James was the decision maker. But he was adamant. I would have pressed him, but he had told me that that very morning someone broke into his car and stole a bunch of stuff. So I felt bad as he was in the middle of making calls to rectify that. The call lasted, let me check, 20 minutes? It felt like an hour with all of the info he was giving me. Oh my God, I wish you were a third party listening with me. And I put exclamation point. Girl, me too. So she said, then I said, I sent a note to the clerk to ask how to get copies of the transcripts Owens requested, hoping since JAC is covering that cost, they don't charge me. Nothing should need to be redacted since it was publicly released. Fingers crossed. Little did I know they were going to post it right to the website, to the Orange County Clerk website. She said, I intend to write up a list and call him again this week. And then I responded to it, felt like an hour. And me being a third party listening, that would have been amazing. So, and it wouldn't have been attorney-client privilege breach, right? Because Lana was not a client. Oh my God. I did end up writing to Kevin Beck. I can't remember if I put that in a video, but he responded twice. And then the third time was like, can I ask what your interest is? But he thought it was a travesty that Sarah got life. I didn't respond to that part. So I think that's when he was like, girl, who are you again? So she said, I don't know how to record phone calls, but I don't know the laws of New Mexico. So I'll just continue to fast type notes as I hear them. I type pretty fast too, but I don't know shorthand. And I said, right. I'm double checking Florida law now. Florida laws now. And I did that grinny thing because I had already recorded a call. But it's one party consent. So as long as I knew it was being recorded, I was okay. Although some people were like, but you're in New York. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not in Florida. Anyway. So was Margaret confused? I guess it doesn't matter. Okay, we're at 1 hour, 41 minutes. The time investment in these, if you guys knew how long it took me to screenshot all these because I couldn't get the PDF. Every time I tried it, it timed out. So I had to screenshot each individual page. It was hours. And now this is an hour and 45 and I still have to edit it because I forgot to redact some stuff. Baby, we are invested. You hear me? Sounds like she hasn't been provided a proper appellate attorney. What is the court thinking? Of all cases, someone should have triple checked. It's giving me agita. Quick question. She said, sure. I don't know if I have an answer, but I'll try. And then I sent, this is a picture of a slide I was working on for one of the videos. And it's a picture of Lana. It's a picture, I think, of Julian Delapine's wife and some other people. And she goes, what is the question? And I said, is it okay for me to use this photo? I touched it up a wee bit, but I'm not a professional toucher-upper. And she said, sure, that is me. Was that from my LinkedIn? And then I said, if you say not to use it, I won't. And she said, sure, you can. And then I put, anyone who hears my name in the Boone case has no doubt looked me up. I'm nothing special, but I knew it was coming. Thanks for asking. And she said, who is Linda Di Matteo? And she said, and I have seen the name Julian Delapine before. So we know Julian Delapine is the Delapine creative guy. So she's being coy here, but she's going to come clean. But I think she, out of loyalty to Sarah, maybe she's like, I've seen the name before, but she knows exactly who he is at this point. She said Sarah hasn't mentioned him because remember, she hadn't even called these people until Sarah hadn't called these people until Lana got sick, which was like 2 videos ago from the text messages. So she knew full well who Julian Delapine and Peter were. But she's being coy. So she said, Sarah has mentioned him. Oh, was he on the visitor list? Question mark. But she's calling attention to him, which has my antennas up because I'm like, maybe she hadn't seen the phone logs. But no, she's saying he was on the visitors list. I always do the visitors list and phone log videos together. I'm not sure. Coy, though. I'm sure she's being coy. And I was like, is it him? Exclamation point, question mark. Okay. The number comes back to both Julian and Linda, but Julian is on her video visit log. And so she says she gets a lot of visitors I've never talked to or know myself. Some are weird. She says, oh, that makes sense. But she's distancing herself because she knows who this man is. So I said joint video visits with Delapine and Peter Gunthal, which I think I spelled his name wrong here. And she says, wasn't Peter one of the ones who gave Sarah money? Yes, he was. And I said, they both attended via a visitor station, though, not from home. And I said, was he? I have to go back and look. So she said, so they went to see her in person. The last name Gunthal kind of tripped my memory. And I said, I have a phone date with my niece in Sacramento in a minute. I'll be in 30 minutes. And then she said, not that it's a good memory, lol. I said, they went in person, but they were not with Sarah in person. And she said, okay, take your time. I said, they used a visitor station instead of dialing in from home like Brian does. She said, which now that I think of it, I don't know how, I have to look at that again. That might be wrong because they were not in the state. So are there visitor stations outside of the state? I don't remember. And then I just said, thank you. When she said, sure, you can. I ended up not using it because I felt like, I don't know, it would bring her too much into the spotlight. I explain it later. And then she comes clean here. I should be honest with you. I know who Peter and Julian are. When I told Sarah you wanted me to go online with you, it wasn't just her who freaked out. Julian and Peter asked me not to say anything about them either to you. As much as I'd like to give you details on their relationship with Sarah, I can't, but I won't stand in the way of your own research. And so I did a heart there, right? So she's being loyal to Sarah, but she is like letting me know she knows who they are, and basically like the, you know, what is that from? Oh my God, I can't think of it. The X-Files, they're out there, whatever that line is. Anyway, so I said, say no more. And she said, thanks for being so understanding. I'm so happy I met you. And I said, wow, I agree with him, but I was wondering how that might work. Kranick asked her daily if she's happy with her representation. So I'm replying to the Kevin Beck thing. Did Owens or Henderson hit on her? Maybe there is opportunity there, although she probably would have liked it. I was like, yeah, but could you hold her to that? That's kind of like asking a kid if her parents are abusive with them standing right there. How could she say no in front of everyone? Oh, she could say no. Remember when she said no, she didn't know who was on the witness list? And then Owens went to shucking and jiving and is like, we're going to get to that. And then Kranick followed up. And she was like, well, I don't know who they are, but I trust that blah, blah, blah. She could have said no. Sarah, she could have said no. So then I said, thank you. I truly appreciate your graciousness and generosity of time. And she gave me a heart response. And then she says, hi, this pic might be better than the one from my LinkedIn. I think the LinkedIn pic cuts off a lot of my head. And I said, nice. I decided not to include any photos, felt too intimate. She said, oh, gotcha. I wouldn't have minded if you did, but it's best not to break everyone's computer screens with my image, lol. And I was like, stop, enjoy your freedom. She said, my freedom, question mark. And I said, anonymity, had to check the spelling. She said, oh, hey, thanks, lol. I lost that when I agreed to speak on Sarah's behalf at sentencing. And I said, if people really want to know, they can search. No need to make it easier. And she said, I went to Facebook right after I did and had a lot of friend requests and messages of various nice, mean levels. She said, you're awesome. Mean? I said, what is wrong with people? She said, oh yeah, there were some haters. One guy wrote me asking where I had stashed George's body since I was Sarah's accomplice, and if we had men in the basement tied up and gagged or something like that. And I was like, whoa, please be safe on there. She said, of course, you know, internet people are nuts. I said, I'm learning new depths. She says there was only one weak death threat I reported the guy for, and they yanked him off of Facebook. I said, like, why would someone take time to go out of their way? And she said they have nothing better to do with their lives. To send that crap, what is their point? Question mark, question mark. She said, I have modded friends' pages and boards before and have seen crazies. And I did the exclamation point reaction and said, miserable. She said, right, you know what I'm talking about. Have you ever had nuts in your live broadcasts? Then she goes, Sarah hasn't called today. I hope she isn't too sick. Sarah's motion she wrote is a motion of inquiry. She called me tonight. She is really sick. She sounds horrific. Her fever is at 102. And then I respond Monday at 3:51 a.m. And I was like, maybe norovirus? She said, that is what I was thinking. Luckily, she is going to the doctor tomorrow. And then I responded to her, have you ever seen nuts in your broadcast? I said, no. I've seen some in others, but mods usually put them in a timeout and block them. She said, that's good. I remember being impressed with your chat while you were live. And then I responded to the nuts in the broadcast. Is it going around in there? Hopefully she can get her fever at a break. I think I meant to respond to the 102 fever, but I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, we got 10 minutes and then we got to get out of here. Some of these crazies, and we're on page 49 of 127. I always underestimate how fast I can read. And then I always get people, you're reading too fast. If it's too fast for you, you know you can slow it down in the settings, right? Okay, you don't have to share with us. Wait. Some of these crazy scheduled visits with Sarah while she was in jail. Shelley told the story of how one composed and sang a song about Sarah's crime. I think this is she and not Shelley, while waiting for her to show. And when she got there, this lady was talking about being psychic and hearing George talking to her from beyond the grave. Yes, it is. She said one of her closest bunkmates, who weighs about 400 pounds, got really sick and spread it all over there. Yuck. I said, no, what the hell? She said, yeah. She didn't remember her name, but after this lady mentioned that Sarah understandably ended it right then and there. And I responded with exclamation points. She said it was before I met her. And then I said, how did they get in without pre-approval? Isn't there a list? Dear God, I can't imagine. Lana says, I told her it was a wonder she actually answered my letters. At the jail, all you need to do is schedule the time. You just need to have the jail approve you. And for that, you just need an ID. I said, wow, seems like the inmate would get input on who gets approved. And she says she sees the name, and of course she has a choice whether to show up or not. So I knew that because when mentor lawyer came and she refused him, and then she went on this rant about, oh, she was scared to go out there. They should have vetted him. Y'all know my opinion on that. So I said, you just wrote her out of the blue? Were you expecting to hear back? And she says, remember the court TV reporter who misrepresented as her friend? And I said, okay, so she can see the name before she turns on the video or whatever. What a strange process. She said, yeah, I just wrote to her out of the blue using the Emilio app. I put $25 into her commissary for paper and stamps for her to answer back, plus something extra. And then she says, yes, she can. I was like, oh, how did you find out about the app? I'm learning something new. She said, in my letter, I told her that if I were meeting her out in the real world and wanted to introduce myself, I'd buy her a drink or grab a bite. My commissary was like that. Emilio? I Googled ways to contact inmates, since it's hard for me to walk to a mailbox or the post office. So then when I posted the video about eye care, someone commented thanking me because they sent one to Wade Wilson as a result. And then I put mind blown emoji. She said, haha, Sarah herself told me about eye care. They offered Skittles and her commissary didn't. And then I responded about her not being able to get to the mailbox. Necessity is the mother of invention. Exactly. And then I asked her, did she follow the case since 2020? She said, no, I learned about her from JCS, and I put exclamation points. So I'd say 2022. And then I didn't start being nosy until Cranick came on the case. So many bits of misinformation out there. Even the lawyer channels get lots of facts wrong. And she responded, very true. I didn't really expect to hear back from Sarah, but I kept writing her, just talking about stuff I was hearing on, I think she means YouTube, and talking about whatever. And then I put, wow, I wondered about her incoming mail. Like, how do people in other countries know? YouTube? She said, then one day, ... ellipse, and she's now answering my other question. I guess so. And I said, did you see Bruce Rivers' reaction to Sarah thinks she's going home? She said, yes, I saw it. Bruce Rivers is a lawyer here in Minneapolis. And I said, oh. So we're going to stop there. We'll pick up on page 52. We've got 52 of 127 to go for January. So we're not going to rush it. I just want to get it under 2 hours so that StreamYard will make shorts for me, which I'm going to have to check because I didn't redact everything. What do you guys think? Let me have it. It's okay. I can take it. Constructive, though. No personal attacks. It's interesting. Like, I feel like she trusted me faster than I thought she would, as far as like telling me things like what the lawyer said and fessing up about Peter and Julian, like giving me a little bit like to go research, but also not breaching her trust with Sarah. I will say after Sarah refused to talk to her, all bets were off. At that point, she was pissed. I think also that kind of helped because we're still in January, right? So Sarah starts giving her static at the end of February, and then they're still arguing March, and like around March 12th or whatever, they cut it off. And so I think between that and the information, the truth that she had been reading about, it started to dawn on her like what her real relationship was like with Sarah, because she went from this promising undying love and she will love her forever to you better do what I tell you or I'm not talking to you anymore. Right? It doesn't comport, if you will. So yeah, but we talked a lot and not always about the case. This one was pretty heavy because we were talking about the appeal, but then we talk about our kids, our families, our backgrounds. Obviously, we talked about her medical situation a lot, and yeah, just getting to know each other over documents and tea. Yeah, I don't regret getting to know her. I will say that. People can say whatever they want, that they felt deceived or but again, I think it's pretty clear why. If I said anything, then I was not going to be able to talk to her anymore, right? She was trying to butter Sarah up, I guess, or whatever. And she was getting information, and I knew that was from me. I knew that was part of the gig. I was also getting information from her, even if it was stuff that I couldn't always share. Some of it was stuff that I could kind of go off in a direction and hear what they were saying in the back room, if you will, and then bring that to you guys. Like the appeal stuff, knowing that something had been filed, but not being able to say it. But then that kept me pursuing, like, something is wrong because on the back end it's been filed. Margaret saying it's filed. She's got this documentation. But even in that, I think there was a page missing, but what ended up is, I don't even remember now. It went to the wrong district court of appeals. It went to the 9th district, and Bankowitz had that missing piece. But yeah, so make of it what you will. But I feel like her heart was in the right place. Yes, she's not saying negative things about George to me, and she never says Jay to me. So I don't know that until I see the text messages. But I just felt like she was coming from a good place, and irrespective of like them being catty, I don't know. That's how some people get to know each other. I'm not condoning it, but it wasn't enough. It's not enough for me to say, I can never talk to you or I cannot consider you a friend because of what you did. That's just me. Okay. 1:58. Let me get the outro going so I don't miss the mark. I'll talk to you guys later. Toodles. I'll talk to you in the comments.